Hey, so this is Dishant from Unica University Common Application. I recommend you to watch AAU television.
AAU TV is the place to be for every person in higher education in Africa. Better be there or be nowhere.
Continuez de regarder la télé et surtout sur le AAU.
Keep watching it and it will change the way you interact with higher education on the continent. AAU, great job.
I want to tell you that AAU television is fantastic, it's educative, it's informative, and it is a must for anybody who is interested in higher education in Africa.
When I was in Accra last year, I did an interview on this TV. It's a very important mouthpiece.
It's a data, it's a bank of all we need for the development of higher education in Africa.
People should make an effort to view it because it discusses very current issues of development across the continent.
I believe that the station will continue to promote the overall development of Africa, particularly in the tertiary education sector.
AAU TV provides a platform and shares a lot of information to a broader audience. So we wish you all the best and please continue serving
AAU TV,
the voice of higher education in Africa.
Affecting Africa's food system. These are the and the chemical contamination risk within the fish value chain. Interestingly, both presentations are drawn from research undertaken under the leadership and supervision of a distinguished project principal investigator. And so before we proceed to the technical presentations for today, it is my pleasure to invite Professor Saweda Liverpool-Tassi of Michigan State University in the USA to deliver an opening remarks. Prof, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. You can unmute.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you're joining us from. Unfortunately, Professor Saweda is in another engagement, so I will be presenting the overview of the RSM2SNF project briefly on her behalf, and she sends her regards and apologizes for the whole confusion, if there's any. So I'll just get straight into it, if that is okay with everyone. Okay.
Please proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Please, can anyone confirm they can see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yes, we can see your screen, yes.
Thank you. So again, my name is Grace Amadi. I'm the project management assistant for the RSM2SNF projects in Nigeria, and I'm presenting on behalf of Professor Saweda Liverpool-Tassi, who is the lead principal investigator of the project. So over the last 3 decades, the agri-food value chain has grown rapidly, and the transformation has been facilitated by the investment of the micro, small, and medium enterprises in the midstream and the downstream. However, this actors and midstream and downstream have been less studied over the years. So this is where RSM2SNF project comes in. What RSM2SNF project is doing is to build knowledge regarding this MSMEs across agri-food value chain, and the 3 major focus of product of focus are the tomato, GLV, and fish value chain. So RSM Center is building knowledge regarding this MSME across this 3 value chain to understand how this value chain can improve the supply of affordable, safe, and nutritious food. So, there's this general notion that when we try to produce safe food, it becomes unaffordable. So when we package it the right way, it becomes more expensive than when you get it, and then nutritious food. And then we're working across 2 countries, that's Nigeria and Tanzania, and the project funded by the Gates Foundation. And on the project, we have worked with a broad set of value chain actors, policymakers to private sector, academia, and civil society. So we have worked with these stakeholders to help us understand, so we can learn how this activities actually influence the supply of this nutritious food. And then this is just a brief overview of this research methodology. We started with the rapid reconnaissance, where we kind of carry out a lay of the landish sort of survey to understand the perception of agri-food value chain actors about what the value chain is, their perception of what is going on, what could hinder or what could influence, the production of this, the supply, the supply of this nutritious food. And then we also carry out the markets, which is also the meso studies, where we had key informant interviews with market leaders to understand the structure of governance and market. And then we carried out the stack surveys, as we can see on the screen. I don't go into details, so I don't delay us from the presentation. And then, we also carried out a co-creation intervention in both countries to actually, to address challenges faced by this MSME. So in the process of, engaging and interacting with these value chain actors, we were able to understand some of the challenges, and so the RSM to SNF is also working together with these actors to co-create intervention that will address the challenges they may be facing. We also developed a market level metrics to characterize food market in terms of nutrition, food safety, inclusion, and infrastructure. And this has gone beyond Tanzania and Nigeria. We have also extended to Kenya and India. And so all of this are right on our website. And so if it is needed, we can always pass that across to everyone so we can have access to the details of the information. These are just the highlights of activities that we have carried out. Like I said, we collected data, we had interaction with MSMEs in the value chain. And these are the figures, the numbers of value chain actors, markets that we have visited, both in the tomato and then fish, tomato GLV and the fish value chain. And then we also have outputs that have come out from some of this, some output that have come out from this interaction, which we'll be hearing in details in today's presentation from our wonderful scholars. One key aspect of the project also is we have what we call the early career, that's ECS, early career scholar training and mentoring, where we have some set of scholars that have been selected, and then we work with them in designing and implementation of research, alongside research writing and dissemination. So it's actually been a very wonderful journey with our scholars, and we'll be seeing it ourselves in their presentation today. And the same thing we do in Nigeria, we do the same in Tanzania. And so this is the brief overview of highlights of what we have done in Tanzania as well. And I would like to hand over to the presenters, so for the details of what we do around food safety in Nigeria and Tanzania. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for this very insightful opening remarks. It is my pleasure now to invite Ms. Anastazia Bukuba from Sokoine University of Agriculture in Tanzania. Ms. Bukuba will present findings on chemical contamination risk within the fish value chain in Tanzania, focusing on fish practices in Mwanza region. Her research identifies a critical point at which chemical risk enter the value chain and highlights targeted interventions to strengthen food safety through improved regulation, awareness, and sustainable fishing practices. Ms. Bukuba, the floor is yours. Please unmute and present. We would help you share your screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miss Lydia, for welcoming me to do my presentation. As you said, my name is Anastazia Bukuba. I am an early career scholar in the project titled Research Supporting Small, Micro, and Medium Enterprises to Provide Safe and Nutritious Foods. And apart from that, I am also a researcher at the Sokoine University of Agriculture, where I work at the Department of Food Science and Agro-Processing. So I'll wait for you to share my screen so that I can share with you what we have been doing in our project. Thank you. Thank you so much. So today I'll be presenting about chemical use in fishing activities within Lake Victoria, looking at the prevalence, associated factors, and potential food safety risks in Mwanza, Tanzania. In this project, as I said, I'm an early career scholar, and thank you for this platform. So I'll take you through the background, problem statement, what is our gap and what were our objectives, the methodology, results, discussion, conclusion, and recommendations as well. The picture you have seen before is just the scenery of Lake Victoria, the fishermen doing the after practices after that. But to start, we all know that fish is very important globally and even in our own countries. It contributes about 17% of the global animal protein intake, but also the growth production of fish has been increasing from at a rate of 79% from 2000 to 2024. And in 2024, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, it has reached to about 235 million tons. It is important as it supplies high-quality protein, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals including zinc and also selenium. But also the omega-3 fatty acids are important for our health and diet, especially dealing with cardiovascular health risks, as well as brain functions. Next slide, please. But also in Tanzania, this fisheries sector is very important as it contributes to the growth of our gross domestic product at 1.3%. And also it employs very many people, around 400,000 artisanal fishers, the small-scale fishers, and 4 million people, over 4 million people depend on fisheries-related activities in terms of fish processing, fish trading, fish transportation, and therefore we have many people relying on fishing activities for their own livelihoods, but also for food purposes. Next slide, please. But now, with the importance of this sector, it is faced by different pressures. We have current pressures on fisheries, which include population growth and unemployment, overfishing and competition among fishes, but also unregulated and illegal practices for increased profitability. We know as years goes by, the population increases in almost every country, but the water sources remain the same, and therefore there is high demand and the supply has to go with the demand. But also with this population growth, there are also issues of unemployment. And in the fisheries part, it is not, you do not require a degree to go for fishing activities. Therefore, many people opt to enter in that business of fishing, especially those who were born and raised in such areas. Now, this results into overfishing, but also competition among these fishes. And later, with that high pressure, there is now the outcome of unregulated and illegal practices for increased profitability to maintain the livelihoods, but also to make good money out of that. Now, this results to several consequences, including damage to aquatic ecosystems, biodiversity loss, reduced long-term fisheries sustainability, but also declining fish stocks and human health and food safety concerns. Now, this depends on the kind of practices that these people have been using to face their pressures. So if they use things like chemicals, as we are going to be discussing here, that will result to human health and food safety concerns. But if they use methods like dynamite fishing, that may result to loss of biodiversity loss and also compromising of the long-term fishery sustainability. But in our context, we'll now discuss about the unregulated and illegal practice of the use of chemicals in fishing. Next slide, please. So what is the context of this research? The current increase in the use of different chemicals such as pesticides and plant poisons is fast becoming a major challenge for sustainable fish production in Mwanza, Tanzania, and even in other parts of Tanzania. So this affects both production and markets, whereby the fish and the fish actors themselves are exposed to chemicals across the fish value chain, leading to chemicals entering their bodies, especially the fish actors getting different problems with the use of chemicals, but also the fish that is the product itself is contaminated with chemicals that fish is later going to be consumed by the majority of the population. Now with the consumption of this contaminated fish, we are going to get things like chronic illnesses, which make the food safe to risks, for example, cancer, but also there is undermined consumer confidence in foods that are in the market. So if people hear of the chemical use in fishing activities, they are not going to be confident in eating that food. Next slide, please. Next slide. So why is this research important? We have seen that most studies focus on contaminants in fish products. There are many studies that are done to detect or to determine the levels of pesticides in fish or microbial contaminants in fish. But now that shows that there is that use of the chemicals in fishing activities. But what are the factors behind? What are those things that favor the use of chemicals? What are the market incentives for these fishermen to do that? Because if we do not look back at what is the cause of all this, we are not going to come up with good interventions to end this problem or to minimize the prevalence of this problem. Therefore, we have limited evidence which exists regarding the behavior, market, and socioeconomic drivers of chemical use among fishers. What is to be done to end or to stop the use of chemicals in fishing has to start by looking at the factors, the socioeconomic factors, the market characteristics, and market orientation characteristics too, to stop, to look at all that chain to know where to start and to come up with good interventions to stop the use of chemicals in fishing. Next slide. Therefore, our general objective was to examine the prevalence. What is the situation of chemical use in Mwanza and what are the drivers of the use of chemicals in fishing? So the specific objectives were to determine the prevalence of chemical use, to assess market characteristics in association with the use of chemicals. How do the market characteristics favor or how are they in line with the use of chemicals in fishing, but also identify determinants of chemical use in fishing practices. Next slide, please. Therefore, we were testing for the following hypothesis. Market channels influence chemical use. So do they affect or do they not? Our null hypothesis says market channels do not influence chemical use. But also we are looking at how commercialization influences chemical use as our second alternative hypothesis. Fisher characteristics, for example, their experience, registration or licensing, their location, how do they influence chemical use, but also institutional factors and their influence on chemical use. While the null hypothesis rule out says all this, whether it's market channels, commercialization, fisher characteristics, all institutional factors do not have any association with chemical use. Next slide, please. So for those who may not be able to be with us to the end, these are the preview of, this is a short preview of our findings in this study. So we saw that 40% of fishers in Mwanza report using chemical-based fishing methods. This is not a small percent. It is very many of them as we are going to look at our sample size. But also chemical use, we saw that it is not driven by a single factor, but we have things like market channels, orientations, and fisher characteristics all together in a way or to influence chemical use. For example, land sites were shown not to be involved with chemical use. The fishermen who sell fish at landing sites sold only fresh fish, but in other places, for example, in companies or factories, they could sell fish that has been harvested with chemicals. Also, experience, licensing, and awareness. We know this to be, according to most literature, they would say this to be associated with good practices, but in our case, that was not, whereby these are not the only things to ensure compliance, but what is required is effective monitoring and enforcement strategies. Next slide, please. So this study was conducted in Mwanza region, where we have the Lake Victoria. I believe most of you have heard about this Lake Victoria. It is the Africa's largest lake. We have species like Nile perch, Nile tilapia, which are the large fish species, but also we have daga or Lastiniella argentea, which are the small fish that are found in Lake Victoria. And we conducted our study in 4 districts, which include Buchosa, Ilemela, Magu, and Nyamagana. These were purposefully selected because of the high ongoing fishing activities that take place in those areas. For example, in Buchosa, there is high fishing activities, while in Ilemela, there is high fish trading, processing, and transportation. Magu, there is also high wholesale marketing. And in Nyamagana, there is also prevalent, continuous fishing activities. From those 4 districts, we visited 12 landing sites, which appear in the map that we see there, as we can see from the red spots. So that was our study area in Mwanza region. Next slide. So this was our analytical framework. We conceptualized our work using the binary logistic regression model following Woodridge, and the probability that a fisher using chemicals was given by that equation, whereby xi is a vector of explanatory variables, which were demographic, enterprises, and market characteristics, against those that were to be estimated, or the use of chemicals. Next slide. And our sampling procedure was a 4-stage stratified sampling, as we started from the districts to the landing sites that were selected were 12. And from those 12 landing sites, we randomly selected fishermen and developed a sampling frame of 517 fishes. And using the Yamain formula, at 5% level, we yielded a minimum sample of 226 fishermen. But to account for potential non-responses, we increased this sample at 11% and got 250 fishers in total. So in all 12 landing sites, we interviewed 250 fishermen. Next slide. So data was collected by a group of trained people, where we visited these landing sites, welcomed at the local government authorities and beach management units. And from here, we were able now to speak well to the fishermen and collect data on demographics, fishing experiences, the type of fish that they harvest, market channels, and who do they sell to frequently, whether they were licensed or registered, what is their level of awareness, and chemical use practices as well. Next slide. And finally, after we got the data, this was our analysis. We analyzed data using Stata version 18, whereby the descriptive statistics were used to characterize the sample and the prevalence of chemical use, but also we had a bivariate comparison to compare between those who are using chemicals and those who are not using chemicals across different market and operational variables. Lastly, we did a binary logistic regression to identify factors independently associated with chemical use as we control for all other characteristics. Next slide. So now we'll go to the results. Starting with the descriptive statistics of our study, we saw that fishermen had mainly had an experience of 9.56 years, but this was varied. There were some with 1 year of experience and others with 41 years of experience. That's why we have a high standard deviation, but all of our respondents were male, and then they were mainly operating in small fish operations. 68% were fishers of small fish, while they were also operating in micro enterprises, only 1 to 2 employees, and they had individual boat ownership and not shared ownership or joint ownership, and they were mainly registered. As we see, we have 88%, but they were mostly not doing the processing activities. For them, they were mainly centered with fishing. As we see here, fish processing was only 3.2% of our respondents. Next slide. I think there is one before. Okay, we can continue. The fishing practices and chemical use among actors. So with the descriptives, we saw that 40% of fishers reported to use chemical-based fishing methods. Our sample size was 250, and therefore 100 fishers reported the use of chemicals. Now, these chemicals were different, including traditional plant-based substances, but also synthetic pesticides, but less commonly, dynamites were used. Now, we believe that given the illegal nature of these practices, true prevalence may be higher than that which is reported and recorded, and this has also been said by other researchers. But also similar findings have been reported in other countries, including Ghana, Nigeria, and India. Next slide. These fishermen use different practices to increase catch, as we saw earlier that there are different pressures in this fisheries area. Now we see that some of them use coating of fish nets with traditional plant extracts, others coat nets with pesticides, others use unspecified chemical substances. They could not specify them, but they know that they are chemicals, and others use dynamites, while the recommended practices, only few people reported that, which is about 28%. Next slide. But now for those who are using chemicals, out of the 100 people, 53.4% reported using traditional plant-based substances, while pesticides were about 37.3% and dynamites 9.3%. Now, examples of these traditional plant-based substances were Tephrosia vogeli and Barringtonia extracts, while the kinds of pesticides were organophosphates, deltamethrin, endosulfan, malathion, and diazinon. Next slide. Now, looking at the difference or the significant differences between those using chemicals and those not using chemicals, we saw that many fishes, there was a significant difference between those who use chemicals and those who do not use chemicals in the fishermen who were fishing small fish, whereby most of them were not likely to use chemicals, while those who were fishing large fish, even though not significant, most of them were more likely to use chemicals. And then, in both low and high season, fishermen were more likely to use chemicals. When it comes to selling of the fish in both high season and low season, most of the fishermen sold the fish to traders in Mwanza, but also they were not likely to use chemicals in both low and high season for those that were selling to Mwanza. Next slide. Then when we look at those that are selling elsewhere in Tanzania, it was significant, and most of them were selling were more likely to use chemicals compared to those that were not likely to use chemicals. And even those that were selling to markets, most of them were more likely to use chemicals, while those that, when we compare between rural settings and urban settings, those in urban settings were more likely to use chemicals, while those in rural settings were less likely to use chemicals, and it was significant. Looking at now the binary logistic regression results for actors influencing chemical use among fishermen, we see that selling location was negatively associated with the use of chemicals, whereby the fishermen who sold fish at landing sites were less likely at 1% level to use chemicals in fishing, and therefore they were selling their fish at landing sites. While those that were experienced, as we have seen, fishers have a very many years of experience. At 5% level, those who were experienced were more likely to also be engaging in the use of chemicals chemicals in fishing. Next slide. When we look at business license, this was also positively associated with the chemical use. You see, these people are being registered and licensed, but still they continue with the use of chemicals. Then with awareness, the same, even high significant at 1% level. And those who sold all captured fish were also more likely to engage themselves with the use of chemicals, as well as those who sell to factories and companies. Next slide. Now, let us look at what our results imply. Impacts of chemical use. We see that generally we have seen that traditional plant-based substances are more prevalent in their use compared to pesticides and dynamites. This does not mean that they are less harmful. Literature says that there is limited research comparing the toxicity of these traditional plant-based substances compared to the synthetic ones. So both natural and synthetic poisons can adversely affect non-target aquatic organisms, as well as can enter the bodies of the fish, and therefore, as we consume, we can also get those poisons. Similar use of chemical substances in fishing has been documented in other countries, including Ghana, Nigeria, and India. Next slide, please. And these impacts are not only to the fishermen, because the fishermen get the impacts as they use the pesticides. For example, those who use aluminum phosphide, as they insert it in water, the phosphine gas as it comes out, and then they continuously breathe it, it causes damage to their respiratory system. Some get injuries on their skins and all that, but also we as the consumers of the fish also get the food safety risks. Apart from that, there is also damage to breeding habitats and targeting of non-target aquatic species. Chemical use may also expose fishes directly to hazardous substances, as I have said, and increasing the risk of contamination. Next slide. Now, looking at the chemical use in fishing, we saw that most fishers of large fish were more likely to use chemicals compared to those of small fish. The fishers of small fish are mainly, they don't have enough money. They have simple boats, but they cannot afford high motorized boats to go to very far places and do the fishing. But also these of large fish species, the large fish are scarce, but they are more valuable, and therefore if one has to get this and they are not easily available, one may opt to go and use chemicals to attract the large fish. So, but the small fish also, in many periods, there are always plenty or many in water bodies. Also, we saw that these fishermen operate both in high and low seasons. This proves that this is a year-round activity. So Lake Victoria fisheries is a continuous source of livelihood for these surrounding communities. Next slide. When we look at now the market characteristics in association to chemical use, we saw that those selling at landing sites were less likely to use chemicals, meaning that market environments may influence compliance with acceptable fishing practices. And those people that buy at landing sites, most of them are they know the quality of fish, and there is even high competition of the fishers as they come back with fish from fishing throughout the night. So one may not opt to buy your fish because visibly, if you have used chemicals, they may easily detect. But also, the buyers of processed fish have also prompted other actors to be careful in the types of fish that they sell to them, because buyers may reject fish perceived to have been harvested using unsafe methods. Next slide. But it was interesting to find out those who sold to factories or companies, though there were very few, but they were more likely to use chemicals. This may be due to high demand for consistent volumes in modern market channels, which incentivize the use of unsafe practices, as said by different authors. Next slide. And then when we look at experienced fishers, according to many findings of the literature, experience is associated to adoption of good practices, but we forget to look that an experienced person may have greater knowledge of something. For example, in fishing, greater knowledge of fishing, harvesting, catch maximization strategies, but also may be experienced to know the prohibited practices and how to continue with that without being caught. Because in our findings, we see that even experienced fishers continued with prohibited use of chemicals. Registration, most of them were registered very well, but now this proved to be insufficient to discourage illegal fishing methods. Now, this may be due to what are the aims of that registration? Is it for tax collection? Is it for monitoring and enforcement? Or the motives behind registration are the ones that now will prove whether that registration will be helpful in mitigating the use of chemicals in fishing. And some may opt to go for registration just because to discourage them being fined for not complying to that, because it is a requirement for a fisherman. All fishermen should be registered. Next slide. So generally, we have seen that there's a high prevalence of the use of chemicals in Mwanza region, whereby 40% of the fishermen we interviewed said to use one or more chemicals. But also, we have seen that the use of chemicals is not driven by one factor, but it is an interplay of the kind of people they sell to, that is the market channels and orientation, but also the fisher characteristics themselves. Then fish sold at landing sites was proved to be safe because most of them landing sites were proved not to harbor fish that has been harvested with chemicals, while factory sales and maximizing catch are risk factors. Next slide. Then experience, licensing, and awareness alone do not ensure compliance, but what is required is effective monitoring and enforcement of laws and regulations by all the actors along that area. So our findings were just in Mwanza, but these carry implications beyond Mwanza because Lake Victoria is a shared basin in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, and these dynamics are likely to affect small-scale fisheries across Africa. Next slide. Therefore, we recommend that there should be strengthened surveillance and enforcement mechanisms because we should not only rely on registration or licensing. Licensing should be linked to actual compliance checks, but also it is very important to build market-based incentives for compliance. For example, setting good prices for fresh fish compared to those fish that are visibly seen to be compromised with the way that they were harvested. It is also important for we as a community to support the community-based management. There are some landing sites that may be far from the easy reach of the local government authority, but as we raise awareness of the negative sides of the use of these chemicals and support those communities to just form themselves associations that will strongly prohibit the use of these chemicals, and that we can work together and come up with good interventions and strategies to end this use of chemicals in fishing. Therefore, we also have to redesign awareness campaigns and fund follow-up testing. Next slide. Those are references that we have in our work. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, thank you so much for your attention. Thanks to the PI and all of you who have joined, and thanks to the Association for African Universities for this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bukuba, for this very informative presentation and also for sharing the outcomes of your research with us. Please, let's give it up for Ms. Bukuba for this great presentation. I really must say that it is encouraging to see work that addresses such a critical issue at the intersection of food security, food safety, public health, and also sustainable fisheries. I have a few questions to further our discussions. And so, Ms. Bukuba, I would ask these questions. And also to say that as we go on, if you have any questions for Ms. Bukuba, please feel free to post them in the comment section. Otherwise, if you'd like to read out your question by yourself, please raise your hand, and when the time is right, you'll be given the platform or the opportunity to do so. My very first question is that in your research, did you observe the differences in food safety practices between the formal and informal market, or between urban and rural setting?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, the practices between formal and informal markets were more or likely the same in both rural and urban areas. And that's why we report that the prevalence is almost equal to in both urban and rural areas. So there were no great differences in the practices in urban and rural areas. And by the way, those places are not really very far from each other. Yeah, but
Okay.
yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And your findings show that some traders adapted good hygiene practices while others did not. What were the biggest barriers preventing traders from consistently implementing safe handling practices?
Oh, thank you for that question. I think that's out of my presentation. I did not present about traders having good hygienic practices, but here we are looking at fishermen and their practices, the use of chemicals and the prevalence of chemical use. I'm not sure if I got it well, but
Okay, so we have a question here in the chat box. Trying to get the question, so I read it out. A minute, please. But while we get the question, if you also have any questions from your end, please feel free to bring it in. So please, you can raise your hand and you'll be given the platform to speak.
just to make it clear about traders, what we saw in our study is that traders may influence the kind of fish that they want to have to sell to their clients, because they are used to that setting, and therefore they know fish that is harvested with chemicals. So the buyers also can also identify, some buyers in Mwanza can also identify the kind of fish that has been processed with chemicals. Therefore, the traders themselves force the fishermen not to adopt to the poor fishing practices or the use of chemicals in fishing. That means the traders influence fishermen to stop the use of chemicals, but not all, that is some. And therefore, especially now, these traders buy fish at the landing sites. That's why we have landing sites, fishermen going there with fresh harvested fish and not the ones that are set to other market channels, like in other markets like that. I don't know if that's clear now.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. So in terms of the questions, we have a question here that says, are there any human health I'm taking the question again. Are there any human health implications as a result of these chemicals? If so, what is the government doing to stop this illegal activity?
Yes, to respond to that question, there are many health implications that result from the consumption of chemicals. With chemicals in foods, there is a cumulative health risk, whereby with frequent consumption, the chemicals accumulate in our bodies and may result to issues such as cancer. Cancer is a big health issue that comes with consumption of chemicals. But what is the government doing? I think there is enforcement, but it is not frequent and it is not continuous. Now, this causes these people to just take it easy and continue with their ways because of the pressures that are facing them. They want to make more money, but also they want to meet the supply and things like that. So the government needs to really put more effort and put more money in supporting the end of this illegal use of fishing methods, because there is high implications as unsafe food. Anything that is contaminated, especially with chemicals, has very bad effects of diseases. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. And also in the chat box, we have a question that says, why did you sample only men? Are there no women fishermen or what?
Well, thank you. That's a very nice question. Well, the majority, not the majority, well, we were even collaborating with the beach management unit people there, and they were introducing us mainly to male fishermen. And I think there is a difference in how these places are. For example, in Mwanza, most fishermen are men. They go, that activity is very hard. They go fishing in late nights. Actually, they leave the shores around 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. and come back early in the morning. So fishing is mainly done by men in Mwanza because of also the time that they go for fishing. It's very rare for them to go in the afternoon hours. So women, here now we see the gender roles, the difference in gender roles between men and women. So the men are mainly doing the fishing, they will be resting in the afternoon, while the females will now be doing the processing operations and the trading operations. So we only have men fishermen greatly in Mwanza. But it's different when we go to other regions. For example, in Nyasa, we also have Lake Nyasa here. Some fishermen go there in the afternoon. I mean, fishing can be done anytime. People just leave anytime. And also in the other areas, we can have women. But in Mwanza, it was mainly men that did that. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Anastasia. So we have a hand up, Ian Mutasa. Sorry, Ian Mutasa. Please unmute.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the great presentation. I have two questions. So when I saw this other slide, it was about how people who would have used food services should be incentivized. So I'm just coming from a background where I'm looking at Africa as a development. Just want to find out who would be incentivizing these fishermen, and also where would the money come from? And then my second question is, how does this study, how does this survey feed into the public health policies in and around the region of Africa? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ian Mutasa, for these nice questions. One is, who would be incentivizing these fishermen or these strategies that are to be formed? Well, I'll go back to the government. I think we should raise our voices to the policymakers and the government at large, because this is a national problem. It is food that is produced in that country and consumed in that country, and therefore the government is responsible for the health and well-being of its people. But if they do not know what is happening there, the priorities may not be funding those places or supporting different interventions to stop these kind of practices. So I think our work as researchers is to really get involved and to raise awareness and voices of whatever is happening according to our research findings. And as the government sees it as a matter of attention, then they will really do something on it. And for example, if they employ more people if they employ more people to monitor the bad fishing practices, if they give researchers platforms to go and teach in those areas, or to raise awareness of the bad issues that result from the use of chemicals, that will really help to end problems there. So other organizations or institutions that may help, I am really not sure how easily they will be involved, but the primary target, because it's their role as the government to support us, but they cannot support where they do not know what is happening or where they have not seen it as a matter of attention. And to the second question, how does this work inform policies, or where does it stay? So initially, I said that we have had research that has been conducted looking at levels of chemicals or levels of contaminants in foods. But now this research comes to tell us the hidden things back that also relate to, or in a way, or to incentivize the use of chemicals, the use of these bad practices. Because if we find those levels in fish, that means there is the use of that illegal practice. But now this research serves into showing how market characteristics, how fishermen socioeconomic characteristics, and also market structure and variables, how do they also relate to that? Because other researchers have said sometimes the market structure and market characteristics shape the behavior of producers. And therefore, from this research, we can see how fishermen as producers are shaped by these different market characteristics. Like they can supply their fish that is fished with chemicals to these kind of people and not these people. They're experienced, but they are still doing these things. So it really feeds into that body of food safety in the body of literature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. We are behind time, so we'll take the last question. We have a hand up here from Enos Nkomo. Please unmute and make the question brief for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Maybe not much of, or maybe much of what should be in the literature review. Wouldn't it be possible to benchmark our research, which is basically based or centered around Eastern Africa, to other European countries where such activities are taking place? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Enos, for that question. Sorry, can you come again? I've understood, but I want you to make it, to elaborate more. Sorry.
Okay, my question was maybe our research is basically centered in Africa, more precisely Eastern Africa. And then I'm saying maybe in a literature review or somewhere else, wouldn't it be necessary to look at some benchmark in areas where fishing is done, for example, in Europe or other places?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that's very, very important. And as we were doing this work, we also looked at other areas and what is happening. For example, in Nicaragua, there is also the prevalence and use of these chemicals in fishing, especially in rivers. Now that's a worst case scenario because rivers, people use that water daily, and we see the effects of the use of these chemicals in fishing and the associated factors. So as we continue with this research, we are also looking at other places, what they are doing, and we may come up, yes, with that suggestion, we may come up with good or better interventions of what to suggest to be done, because it is still a work in progress. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bukuba. Thanks so much. And now we open the floor for our Afrobarometer representative by the name Suhaila. Please unmute and introduce yourself. Then you feel free to give your remarks on this presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Lydia. Hello, everyone. I am Suhaila, and I am the capacity building trainer at Afrobarometer. Amazing job, Anastasia. I just wanted to share some comments regarding Afrobarometer data, which could be useful to you, not necessarily in the core of your data analysis, but to incorporate maybe from a certain angle, what do the end consumers of the fish, for example, what do they think about certain issues around your topic? For example, in Afrobarometer, we have particular data on, for example, the extent of pollution as a problem in the local communities, including water. What are the most important environmental issues according to those citizens? And also, who should be responsible for reducing such environmental issues? Is it the citizens themselves, the government, or even the business sector? So with Afrobarometer, you can get data for more than 42 countries. So I hear you talked about Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, if I'm not mistaken, on the fish contamination issue. So you can get a comparative perspective on citizens' perception from these countries. And if you want to go further than that, what do citizens in urban region versus rural region think about those issues? So this is what I wanted to share. Great work, Anastasia. Thank you, Lydia.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Suhailia, for those remarks. And that's very helpful to make this work more meaningful. Yeah, so thank you very much, and we will work on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suhelia, and thank you to you as well, Anastasia, for your presentation. Now we move to our next presenter, and it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Ebunoluwa Abatan from the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta in Nigeria. So Dr. Abatan's presentation explores the microbiological safety of fresh vegetables sold in Nigerian retail markets. Her research examines how trader behavior, hygiene practices, market infrastructure, and antimicrobial resistance influence food safety and consumer health, while offering practical recommendations to improve market governance, surveillance, and safe food handling practices. Dr. Abatan, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Introduce yourself and proceed with your presentation. We would help you share your slides as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Lydia. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Also, my name is Itohan Abatan. I am from the Department of Food Science and Technology from the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta. I am also an early career scholar with the RSM to SNF under the supervision of Professor Obadino Adewale and the PI, Professor Sawedia Liva-Butasi. So I would like to proceed with my presentation. Okay, so I'll be speaking on the hidden risk in healthy foods, microbial contamination and antimicrobial resistance in vegetables sold in Nigerian markets. Okay, so for the introduction, Nigeria is endowed with favorable climates and seasons, which enables the enormous cultivation and consumption of vegetables. Food insecurity. Please, can you go back to the previous slide, if you don't mind? Yes, thank you. So food insecurity, malnutrition, and lifestyle diseases such as obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetics among these important global issues that have increased the demand for healthy food such as vegetables. Next slide, please. Okay, so why does vegetable matters? Now, from the farm to fork, fresh produce is central to global nutrition, and its consumption, its cultivation has increased has expanded due to the increase in consumers' demands. Fresh vegetables are rich in vitamins and minerals, and they are critical to immune function, the bone health, and metabolism. They are also rich in dietary fiber, which helps to support the digestive health and reduce chronic diseases. So unlike meat or grains, fresh vegetables are rarely subject to a heat-based step before consumption. This is why some pathogens might thrive. Then also there is also an issue of the antimicrobial resistance, where fresh produce are emerging as reservoirs for antimicrobial resistant bacteria, particularly the extended spectrum beta-lactamase, producing strain which carries very critical resistant genes, and they have been found in some ready-to-eat vegetables. And this is driven by wastewater reuse and intensive agricultural practices. Next slide, please. So, food safety issues in vegetable market. First of all, traditional markets, we can also call them open markets. They are present globally, and one advantage is that they offer affordable foods to millions of consumers. Now, these vegetable markets serve as an important point of contamination when basic food safety conditions are inadequate. And some of these challenges are poor water supply, lack of sanitation, open display, poor waste management, which can increase microbial contamination. And these challenges can lead to cross-contamination, pathogen transmission, environmental contamination, and higher microbial loads on fresh vegetables, which can also pose significant health risks to consumers. Next slide, please. So one of the challenges is poor infrastructure. Now, Nigerian informal markets are the lifeblood of the nation's economy, but yet we have limited infrastructure such as clean water, toilets, electricity. As you can see, some of our markets have been left to generate electricity by themselves, and also improper waste disposal system. And this is a major challenge and can increase the risk of food contamination by promoting unhygienic practices among traders in this market. Next slide, please. So another issue, another food safety issue is poor traders' hygiene. Now, a source of vegetable contamination is the market-related handling practices, which is common among traders, particularly in markets where there are no clean water. Now, this poor hygiene among traders increases the risk of microbial contamination and foodborne diseases. And then also limited access to water, to clean water, can reduce proper handling, proper washing of hands, and proper washing of vegetables by the trader. And also in this market, we also have issues where traders handle produce with dirty hands, and they display their food or vegetables on the ground, which could also serve as a source of contamination to the produce. Next slide, please. So another food safety challenge also is the antimicrobial resistance in vegetables. So there were times when antibiotics were considered the magic bullet for all of human infections, but however, their success today is short-lived, and today microorganisms have become resistant to almost all known antimicrobials. Antimicrobial resistance is a major concern because it can spread through various pathways, including contact with animals or humans, also consumption of contaminated foods or interaction with polluted environments. So what I'm just trying to say is antimicrobial resistance is a growing public health concern. Next slide, please. So how resistance reaches the consumer. Now this slide illustrates the pathway through which antimicrobial resistant bacteria can reach the consumers through fresh vegetables. And so for contaminated water or soil, it can introduce resistant bacteria during cultivation. Poor cold storage allows these bacteria to multiply even after harvest. Unhygienic market handling during transportation and marketing further increases contamination. And then because these vegetables, some of them are ready to eat, they are often consumed raw without cooking. They bypass the heat treatment that will normally kill the bacteria, and then they allow multi-drug resistant organisms to enter the human GIT. So the key takeaway is these vegetables can act as a vehicle of contamination or for transmission of antimicrobial resistance to humans. Next slide, please. So then why should we worry? The first point is resistant bacteria can colonize the gut. Now, resistance don't just stay in the soil, it travels through water, waste, and even farming practices until it reaches humans. So secondly, resistance gene may transfer to human pathogens. The third point is infections become harder and even more expensive to treat. And then the last point is it threatens one health and food system resilience. Now, AMR is not just a hospital problem alone. It is a shared crisis that spans through human, animals, environmental health. And then when we have failure in agriculture, this can inevitably spills into clinic. So now we are looking at the results, which is evidence from markets in Ogun State. So from some of the studies that we have carried out, the first one is the descriptive statistics of some of vegetable samples which are collected from traders. Here we collected tomatoes, carrots, and cucumber sample. So for the first table, we have about 40% of male. That means about 60% of the traders were female with about 15 years of experience. And it was discovered that less than 1% of these traders had ever attended a food safety training. Then for the samples that were collected, we had about 44% of tomato samples, 22% of carrots, 32% of cucumber. And these traders were at an average age of 39 years. And then we had about 16% of these traders who had less than a primary education. That means that we had more traders that had secondary and then tertiary education. So some of these studies have been published. Next slide, please. So table 2 shows the adoption rate of good hygienic and handling practices among traders. So here for overall, we have about 52% of traders that change their wash water at an interval of 4 hours, and more of these traders were the tomato traders. Then we had a very low turnoff of traders that use plastic crates to store or move their products. That's about 12%. And also we had more of them who were the tomato traders, even more than the cucumber and the carrot traders. So for traders who practice good hygiene, about 87% of them, we had more of them from the tomato traders. Then for the traders who separated their vegetables before the display, that's overall 80%, we have a larger share from the tomato traders. For the traders who sold their vegetables on a raised platform, we had a high share of overall 83%, and then a higher share from the cucumber traders at 94%. And then traders who sorted their vegetables after purchase, we had a very high percentage, and more of them from the tomatoes. In fact, all tomato traders sorted their vegetables after purchase. Next slide, please. So table 3 shows the determinants of the adoption of good hygiene practices. Now here for the male traders, we discovered that we had more male traders who were more likely to change their wash waters well, but they were less likely to use a plastic crate, and they were less likely to practice hand washing, that's hygiene, washing the hands after the toilet. So traders who were older in age were more likely to practice change of wash water. Then we also had traders in Ogun Central and traders in Ogun East. They were more likely to adopt the use of plastic crates. But for traders in Ogun East, they were more likely to sort their vegetables before selling. Then we had traders who sell tomatoes were more likely to adopt the use of plastic crates, like I said earlier, and they were also likely to practice hygiene, that's washing the hands after using the toilet. And then it was discovered that the more toilets that were available in the market, the lesser amount traders were likely to pay. And when we had toilets, it turned out traders were able to practice hygiene. The next slide, please. So for figure 1 shows the microbial contaminated of some of the selected vegetable samples in all of the senatorial districts. So this was carried out in Ogun State. Like I said, we analyzed the red tomato, cucumber, and carrot samples, and then we discovered that bacillus contamination was about 14.5%, E. coli contamination was about 14.4%, and then for salmonella contamination, we had about 9.8%. Yeah. Next slide, please. So there, table 4, the relationship between good handling practices and the microbial contamination in the vegetable samples. Here we figured that vegetables that were collected from male vendors, they were more likely to be contaminated with E. coli. And then some traders that had higher years of experience in selling vegetables, they had samples that had less contamination with Bacillus species. And then because we sampled both during the raining season and the dry season, for the May and October, which was during the rainy season, it was discovered that we had less contamination by all of these 3 pathogens, and we had more contamination of all these 3 pathogens in the dry season in March. So for traders who changed their vegetables, who changed the wash water of their vegetables at an interval of 4 hours, they had less contamination by E. coli. And then looking at the traders that sell tomatoes and cucumber, they had more contamination by Bacillus species, and cucumber traders had less contamination by E. coli species. Next slide, please. So here, the isolates that were gotten, the E. coli, Bacillus, and Salmonella isolates, were subjected to 18 antibiotics. And then here it was discovered that there was low resistance to gentamicin, levofloxacin, cefuroxime, trimethoprim, ciprofloxacin, imipenem, and cefoxitin among the 18 tested antibiotics. Why we had high resistance, and we showed that high resistance also signifies low susceptibility. Now, this detection of multi-drug resistance in these foodborne pathogens, it clearly indicates that the retail market may serve as an important reservoir and transmission point for antimicrobial resistance in Nigeria. Next slide, please. So figure 3 shows the virulence and the resistance gene of the pathogen in this among these selected vegetables. First of all, I'd like to explain that virulence genes are genetic elements that encode factors which enables microorganisms to invade a host, escape the immune system, and cause disease. While resistance genes are also genetic elements that encode protein that allows the microorganisms to survive antibiotic treatment, but they do not directly cause disease. So here we had low evidence of virulence genes, as we can see, and a high prevalence of the ESBL resistance gene, and also at the B and C. We also had a high prevalence of the quinonone and fluoroquinonone resistance gene. Now, for the high prevalence of quinonone and the fluoroquinonone resistance gene, this is worrisome because fluoroquinones are widely used to treat serious infections caused by Salmonella species in adults. Next slide, please. Table 5 shows the descriptive statistics. Here we have the evidence from retail markets in Kaduna and Oyo states as well. So table 5 shows the descriptive statistics of the tomato traders. Here we only sampled tomato traders in Kaduna and Oyo state. And overall, we had about 71% of male with higher share in Kaduna and 31% lower share in Oyo State. And the traders had an overall age of 40 years with a 15 years experience. And then we had about 59% overall of traders that had at least a secondary education. And then we looked at traders, the traders that had the number of years in membership in their product association. Overall, we had about 4%. And then for the traders that had an enclosed market store, we had about 50% overall, with more of them in Oyo State. Now going down to the market characteristics, we had an overall share of markets in the rural areas, with higher share in Kaduna than in Oyo State. For the market located in the peri-urban market, we had more share in Kaduna than in Oyo State as well. Then for the markets located in the urban areas, we had a higher share this time around in Oyo State than in Kaduna State. Now, it was discovered that overall we had 1% of market that had no source of water. And as you can see, Kaduna State, all the markets in Kaduna State had a source of water. It could be pipe-borne well or borehole. While only 5% of market in Oyo State had no source of water at all. And from the different sources of water, we had the highest share for boreholes, which is in Oyo State. Oyo State had the highest share of markets with a source of water, which is borehole. Now, for markets that had at least one female in their market leadership, we had greater share in Oyo State. This is to tell us that, well, we don't really have so much female vendors in Kaduna State markets. Then for markets that had their leaders selected based on election, we had a greater share in Kaduna State than in Oyo State. Next slide, please. So table 6 shows the adoption of the good hygiene and handling practices among tomato retailers. Well, overall here we had poor adoption of good hygiene and handling practices. And so overall, 22% of traders do not wash, and hence they do not change their wash water. We had a greater share in Kaduna at 26%. While for those who wash their tomatoes, which is in bracket conditioner, we had an overall share of 44% and a greater share at 46% in Kaduna State. So it was also observed that in Oyo State, there is a greater share of traders who wash their hands after using the toilet, who sorted their vegetables and also sold their tomatoes on raised platform. As you can see, 44% in Oyo State, and also for those who wash their tomatoes before sale in Oyo State at 86%. And like I said, we had a very low adoption rate. So table 7 shows the factors that are associated with the adoption of these recommended practices among these tomato traders. Here, for traders who are older in age, they were more likely to change their wash water. And for traders who had greater years or higher years of experience in trading tomatoes, they were less likely to change their wash water, but they were more likely to practice hand washing. And traders that had at least secondary education were more likely to wash their tomatoes. Now, when we looked at markets that had a high number of hired staff, we discovered that these traders were less likely to wash their tomatoes, but they were more likely to practice hand washing. For the years of membership in Product Association, we discovered that they were the traders with higher number of membership, they were more likely to practice hand washing, and also they were more likely to sort their produce before selling. So for the traders in Oyo State as against Kaduna State, these traders were less likely to wash their tomatoes. They were less likely to change their wash water, but they were more likely to practice hand washing, more likely to sort, and they were also more likely to sell on the raised platform. And looking at the regions, the peri-urban markets, traders in these markets were more likely to wash and more likely to sort as against the urban. Then for the traders in the rural markets, they were less likely to change their wash water and they were less likely to practice hand washing. Then also if we look at the source of market, the source of water, markets that had at least either source of water, either pipe-borne, either well-bore or jerrycan, they were more likely, the traders in this market were more likely to wash their tomatoes and also practice hygiene, which is hand washing. And then for markets with at least a female in their market leaderships, yes, they were also more likely to wash their tomatoes, but they were less likely to change their wash water, and they were more likely to sort and sell on a raised platform as well. And for markets that have their leaders elected as a result of election, yeah, they were more likely to wash their tomatoes and also practice hand washing. Next slide, please. So conclusion, poor hygiene practices, inadequate water and sanitation infrastructure, and also weak market oversight creates conditions that increases the risk of microbial contamination of these vegetables. Secondly, practices such as regular washing of vegetables, proper hand washing, use of raised platforms, and hygienic handlings were associated with lower contamination risks, which highlights the importance of traders practicing of traders' behavior in improving food safety. Then thirdly, access to clean water, improved sanitation facility, and accountability of the market leaderships were consistently associated with better adoption of the recommended hygiene practices. And then the detection of resistant pathogens in these commonly consumed vegetables underscores the need for integrated food safety intervention, spanning production, marketing, surveillance, and also protection. Next slide, please. So what are the policy implications? One, targeted education and behavioral change. And it is very important for government and NGOs to help assist in continuous hygiene education and behavioral change programs, probably targeted towards low literacy traders. Secondly, there is a need to invest in water and sanitation infrastructure, as we can see that the inadequacy of water in some of these markets didn't help them to practice hygiene. Then thirdly, strengthen market governance and accountability. Market authorities should help promote transparent election-based leadership and also should empower traders associations to enforce this hygiene standard and monitor compliance. Sometimes it's not as if these traders don't know this food safety practices, but there is a need to enforce this safety standard. And lastly, traders' empowerment and incentives. Traders should be encouraged and they should be sensitized to adopt these recommended practices through recognition schemes, hygiene certificates, and also there should be a need to reduce some of these market levies as well. Next slide, please. So my journey as an early career scholar in the RSM to SNF project, it has been able to strengthen my understanding of food safety challenges in informal markets and food supply chains across Africa. So it has helped to provide opportunities to collaborate with multidisciplinary researchers, policymakers, and food system stakeholders. It has also improved my capacity in scientific writing, data analysis, and communicating research findings to both the academic and the non-academic audience. It has expanded my professional network through mentorship, training workshops, conferences, and also international collaborations. And also it has helped to increase my confidence to contribute to policy discussions, interventions aimed at strengthening food safety systems in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abatan. Please, let's give it up for Dr. Abatan. Please, let's give it up. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was indeed an insightful presentation. And thank you once again for highlighting the critical link between food safety, antimicrobial resistance, and the importance of improving hygiene practices and market systems to safeguard public health. We have a few questions from our participants in the chat box, and I'll read them out for your response, Dr. Abatan. So the first one says, based on your findings, at which point in the supply chain does contamination appear to be most likely to occur? Is it during production, transportation, or retail handling? Over to you, Doc.
Okay, thank you. Every personnel in the supply chain has a role to play in contamination of vegetables. And so because my own study was basically on the traders, So we discovered that some of these traders, they have a very huge role to play. Of course, contamination can come from the farm, but we discovered that some of these traders too also have a role to play by their
Where's your question?
practices as well.
Hey.
So I think from my study, we discovered that there is also a huge or contamination from the aspects of the markets as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. There's another one here that says, which points of contamination is most important and looking into current hurdle technology for food safety and most especially a minute. Okay, so most especially non-thermal for this food type, and how do you think control can be handled? More importantly, when most people rely directly on open market purchase and not packaged. I don't know if this is fine, or should I take it again?
Yes, please take it again. I didn't get that. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So the question is, which points of contamination is the most important? And looking into the current hurdle technology for food safety and most especially non-thermal for this food type. So I guess the question is, which point of contamination is the most important? Yeah.
Okay. When I talked about AML, I said it's a shared crisis, spans from human, animal, and environmental. Now, the first point of contamination might probably be from the farm. So if that can also be looked into, that would be great. So I think the most important point of contamination is the farm. Some of these farmers, they don't carry out the right practices. So that should be looked into first, because there is also a saying, garbage in, garbage out. If it is done wrongly at farming, then it cannot be corrected in the market. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We have some questions in the chat box, but I would come to you, Ian Mutasa. You can unmute, please.
Thank you so much, Doc, for the presentation. It was very insightful. As for me, I would just want to make some remarks. I wanted to find out from you if you got your ethical clearance, if you got your study cleared, because in slide number 4 and 6, I saw some faces of maybe their respondents that came out, and I just wanted to know if there was consent for you to come and present their faces to us. And also another question is, how did you assure the validity of your survey results? How did you assure the validity of your survey results? And lastly, I heard you talk about respondents or traders who were under an elected leader. How did this influence your study? Was there a significant difference that you did say traders who were not under a leader had this much responses, or those who were under a leader gave this other type of responses? How did this influence the study? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I think I only got the first and second question clearly. So for the ethical clearance, yes, we obtained ethical clearance. We didn't just carry out the study, we obtained ethical clearance. Then the second one, I think you're talking about the analysis for my studies. If that is what you are talking about, so we carried out empirical analysis using multiple regression analysis, and so it was followed by statistical analysis of the trader adoption of good hygiene practices, which was correlated with the microbial contaminants. So then the third question, I didn't get it, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Doc. I was asking, I heard you mention about traders who were under an elected leader. So I was asking, was there an influence that you could record to say those who were under a leader had this type of results compared to those who were not under any leadership at all?
No, I don't think that was done. I'm sorry, I don't think that was done. I think what we only noticed was we looked at markets that whose leadership were based on elections. They had some positive correlations with some of these handling practices, such as washing and hand washing, that in compared to markets whose leaders who do not even have leaders. Yes, so that was what we did.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Okay.
Thank you. Well answered. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'll take the last question here and then we would hand over to our representative from Afrobarometer. The question says, which hygiene intervention would have the greatest impact if resources were limited? For example, trader education, access to clean water, improved market infrastructure, or stricter enforcement?
Hygiene intervention would have the greatest impact if
Doc, can you please speak up?
Okay, I'm also trying to read the question because at some point you were muted, probably my network. Yes, so I'm trying
no
to
problem.
go through the question as well. Well, I think for improved market infrastructure, because some of these markets do not have good infrastructure. So I think maybe the greatest impact might be having good infrastructure, because like I said, some of these market traders, they have the knowledge of food safety, but implementation might actually be the challenge. So not that the others don't have or might not have great impact, but maybe the one that should have the greatest impact is if the market infrastructures were actually being improved on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Doc. I now invite our representative from Afrobarometer, Suhaila, for your comments and feedback as well.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Dr. Abatan. That was a great presentation. You took me back to my lab days. And well, your study is very specific for traders, so I'm trying to figure out if you can get some info from Afrobarometer data. So 2 questions that we have in the questionnaire that I thought of is, firstly, we have a question on observation of market in the region that the survey is being conducted. So the interviewers will observe whether or not there is actually a market in that particular region. So nationally, Nigeria, you will have an idea of the percentage of markets there. And secondly, when you were talking about the handling practices, the frequency of changing water, I was thinking about the question where we have, we ask respondent on the frequency of shortage of clean water in the region. So
hello.
Yeah, I think we lost her.
Okay.
I think we lost her.
Can you hear me, Lydia?
Yes, we can hear you, but can you please take your submission again? Your line was breaking.
Oh.
And we lost you at a point.
At which point did you lose me? I'm sorry about that. I was talking about the handling practices. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So regarding the handling practices, you talked about the frequency that the traders need to change water.
Okay.
So I was thinking to be able for them to be able to do that, there needs to be like a clean water source around maybe. So one of the questions that we have in the Afrobarometer survey is the frequency of shortage of clean water across Nigeria. So if that could be of interest for you to look into. Otherwise, well done, Doc.
Thank you very much for your submission, Suhaila. And thank you so much, Doc Abatan, for your presentation. And with that, we have come to the end of today's edition of the AAU Researchers Forum. I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to our presenters, Dr. Abatan and Ms. Bukuba, for sharing your insightful research and also for enriching today's discussion. I would like to also thank all our participants very much for your active engagement throughout today's session. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and for joining the session. We look forward to welcoming you again at the next edition of the Researchers Forum platform. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe and bye. My name is Lydia Nyame once again.
Research begins with curiosity, but its true power is revealed in how it shapes societies. From humanity's earliest attempt to understand nature, disease, and the universe, research has been the means through which knowledge is created, tested, and refined. Long before laboratories and journals existed, people observed patterns, documented experience, and passed learning from one generation to another. Over centuries, these practices evolved into structured inquiry, supported by institutions, peer review, and shared standards of evidence. In the modern world, research is central to development. It strengthens economies, improves health outcomes, and supports effective policy making. Across nations, it plays a critical role in addressing challenges such as food security, public health, climate adaptation, and education. Universities and scientists are often at the center of these efforts, generating knowledge that informs policy, drives innovation, and improves lives. This relationship between research and development is particularly important for Africa. Africa is the world's youngest continent, with nearly 41% of its population under the age of 18. This demographic reality presents both opportunity and Africa is the world's youngest continent, with nearly 41% of its population under the age of 18. This demographic reality presents both opportunity and urgency. Recognizing this, the African Union adopted Agenda 2063, a long-term vision that places education, science, technology, and innovation at the heart of Africa's socio-economic transformation. Research is central to this vision as it underpins Africa's ability to compete, innovate, and lead in a global knowledge economy. Yet, for much of the past 50 years, Africa's research capacity has been constrained by low investment. Data from global and continental research monitoring bodies show that, for decades, Africa contributed well below 1% of global research publications, with outputs heavily concentrated in a small number of countries. Even into the early 2000s, the continent's share of global scientific outputs remained marginal, reflecting persistent challenges related to funding, infrastructure, policy alignment, and human capital. More recent trends, however, suggest a gradual shift. Over the past decade, Africa's research output has grown steadily, with estimated growth rates exceeding the global average of around 4% per year. While the continent still contributes a relatively small share of the world's total research output, the trajectory is upward, pointing to a slowly strengthening research ecosystem and renewed attention to science and innovation. 5 decades ago, research focused mainly on agriculture, basic health, natural resources, and foundational sciences, shaped by immediate development needs. Since then, research priorities have broadened considerably. Today, African universities focus strongly on health, technology, and the social sciences, with growing attention to public health, energy, digital innovation, education, governance, and economic development. These shifts reflect both global scientific trends and the continent's evolving development challenges. Beyond volume, the nature of research collaboration is changing. Evidence from global citation databases shows that African research with strong international and cross-border collaboration tends to have higher impact and visibility. In some cases, countries with fewer publications demonstrate strong citation influence because of deep collaborative networks. This highlights the importance of partnerships in producing research that resonates globally while remaining locally relevant. What happens to research once it is completed is just as important as how it is conducted. Most academic research is disseminated through peer-reviewed journals, conference proceedings, and institutional repositories, yet access to these publications remain uneven. Many high-impact journals operate behind paywalls, limiting access for researchers, students, policymakers, and practitioners, particularly in low and middle-income countries. In response, open access publishing and digital repositories are improving the visibility and accessibility of African research, enabling wider use, stronger citation impact, and greater influence on policy and practice. Research influence does not end with publication. When effectively communicated, research informs public policy, shapes industry practice, and supports evidence-informed decision-making. Agricultural research, for example, can influence food systems, health research can guide national responses to diseases, and social science research can reshape education and governance frameworks. The challenge lies in bridging the gap between knowledge production and real-world application. Across the continent, a growing number of initiatives are addressing this challenge by strengthening research capacity, encouraging collaboration, and linking research more directly to development outcomes. It is within this evolving research ecosystem that the African Research Innovation and Development Network, also known as AFRID, has emerged as a strategic response to Africa's long-standing research visibility and coordination gaps. Designed as a continental digital research intelligence platform, AFRID connects African universities, researchers, and research outputs within a single ecosystem, enabling institutions to better understand publication trends, collaboration patterns, and areas of emerging strength. By aggregating and making African scholarly outputs more visible and discoverable, AFRID directly addresses one of the continent's persistent challenges. Through data-driven insights and a commitment to open science, the platform supports stronger collaboration, informed decision-making, and more strategic investment in research. As research continues to evolve, Africa's task is to produce research that is accessible, relevant, and impactful. AFRID responds by strengthening the visibility, connectivity, and use of African research within global knowledge systems.